Hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Aligned Feminine podcast. I'm Akanksha, your host, and today I'm sitting down with Aruna Kriplani, who is a trained precision nutritionist, biohacker, health behavior researcher, and writer. She works exclusively with female leaders and knowledge workers on brain and menstrual health who seek high productivity without burning out. Welcome, Aruna. It's so cool to have you on the podcast, and I am so looking forward to the conversation that we're going to have today.
Thank you, Akanksha. Very excited to be here as well.
Yay. All right. Okay. So, just to start things off, I would first of all, because I am also not very proud of this, I myself don't have full confidence in the information that I have on, the different cycles as women we have, which is part of our menstrual cycle, right? The different phases. So I would love for you to just first start with that. Like, what are the different phases and how should we take better care of ourselves during each phase?
I think amazing question and point to start off with. Just to give quick context, I didn't have this information myself. I don't come from a background in science or medicine. I came from a pure background in law. And the idea was, a woman competing in a man's world. That's how you grow up, right? And your periods, especially those 5, 6 days of the month, were always things that I felt that an experience that would hold me back,
Hmm.
especially given that I was diagnosed with PCOS when I was 13 or 14. So I spent the first 10 years of my life just grappling with the reality of what it could have meant to be a
Wow.
woman not comfortable in her body at all. I would hate that time, would need injections to even move from bed. And imagine what that does to you, right? Just always thinking about um those 7 days in a month that one you're not looking forward to at all,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
life stops for you. So effectively you have 7 less days a month to live your life fully, right?
Yeah.
The 4 phases of the menstrual cycle came to me in an understanding after a lot of research, just trying to fix my own self. It was very clear that that was no way to be, and if other women could lead healthier lives, there must be something that's available for me as well, right?
Yeah.
The 4 phases of the menstrual cycle take into account the infradian rhythm of our body. We know about the circadian rhythm, the sleep wake cycle
Yes.
with which the sun works, right? The 24-hour cycle. But
Yeah.
there's an infradian rhythm which is longer than 24 hours,
Oh,
which in
wow.
our body
Okay.
shows up as the menstrual cycle. In other animals, it might show up as the hibernation period as well. So there are multiple ways this
Wow.
infradian rhythm shows up. The
Okay.
4 phases of the menstrual cycle are determined by our hormones and how they fluctuate through the month.
Yeah.
Um, our circadian rhythm also has hormonal fluctuation. So our cortisol is higher when we are awake, and our melatonin is lower. By the end of the day, in a healthy body, our cortisol will start to go down and our melatonin will go up. This is a simplified explanation, but to understand that this works cyclically on a 24-hour cycle, give similarly for our infradian rhythm of our body, a different body clock that governs us. Our
Yeah.
estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, all these other various hormones work in tandem with each other. So the
Mm.
first phase is the follicular phase, or you could start with the menstrual phase itself,
Okay.
where the days that we start to bleed. So if the day you start to bleed is day one of your cycle,
Okay.
the first phase would be your menstrual phase when you're bleeding. Then the follicular phase starts when your hormones like estrogen start to rise slowly. Your
Okay.
ovulation phase becomes the third phase where some of these hormones reach their peak.
Oh.
Ovulation is also the time of maximum fertility for us, when it's the
Mhm.
highest chances of getting pregnant. And we'll talk about this, but healthy bodies is not just about fertility, although it is a fertility is a byproduct of our
Yeah.
bodies being healthy.
Correct.
And the fourth phase then becomes the luteal phase, when our body starts to go back to the menstrual phase, assuming there's been no pregnancy. So these are
Okay.
the 4 phases, and given that our hormones function differently in each of those phases and are at different levels, our body has different responses to the food we eat, to exhaustion, to rest, to fertility, to libido, our moods, our productivity. They're all governed by this, and we can see this even on a 24-hour cycle, right? In the morning, most of us might feel a lot more awake. We would not need as much rest as we would by the time evening hits us. So the
Yeah.
same thing, but it's just expanded into maybe a 24-day cycle in some cases, a 35-day cycle in some cases. Body individuality obviously exists in all of these.
Hmm. Wow. So it's basically like we're always just like on the cycle.
Yes,
Like
we
we
are. Yeah,
never stop.
yeah, yeah,
And that's the exact opposite of how men are, because their hormones are like straight, and this is it, and it's never going to like shift and change
yeah,
for you. Wow.
yeah.
Okay. And yeah, so I would want to go deeper into uh, in each phase, like if you could give perhaps suggestions on, what kind of supplementation we can do, or what kind of foods we should eat during each phase. That would be a great
So
discussion.
I will not give any specific supplement or food that apply to everybody. This is more
Mhm.
general in terms of what kind of output to focus on for us, because our
Mm,
bodies are different. Many of us come with different genealogies. Many of us may have some kind of disorders or health conditions. So
yeah.
keeping that in mind, um, now Western science does not accept it, but Eastern medicine, also has one very interesting way of looking at our cycle, which is that the menstrual phase, or when you're bleeding, is winter. So that is the time when you want to rest,
Yeah.
right? Your
Okay.
follicular phase becomes the springtime, where things are getting better. It's time to, be more active, out and about. Summers are just maximum heat. And, in some ways that this shows up is that for many women with balanced hormone, this is also the time when they are the horniest, because the
Mm,
estrogen is at its highest, right? And in some
yeah.
ways our body is saying, I'm ready for a pregnancy. Come,
Yeah.
give me the sperm, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I want to again specify here that pregnancy is not the goal of a healthy body. It is a byproduct if it's something you want, but our bodies are designed for that kind of evolution. So it's best for us to work with that and then take a call on whether we want progeny or not.
Yeah.
And then the luteal phase becomes more autumn, where, let's say leaves are falling. It's time to get back into
Mm,
relaxation. It's time to prep for hibernation. So it's
yeah.
very interesting, because even on a day-to-day cycle, right, like the winter time is more for sleep. We
Yeah.
From a 24-hour perspective, we want to sleep at the end of the day, right? We want to give our bodies rest. We want to give our bodies recovery. The menstrual phase is a time where our body's immunity is at its lowest.
Okay.
Now, this has been designed intentionally to unlock a pregnancy. Given that if it was a foreign substance and or an object, and
Mm.
our immunity was much higher, the body was not going to accept that pregnancy or the sperm that would allow for that
Oh,
pregnancy at
so
all,
it'll
right?
probably kill a lot more sperm actually that's
it's
entered.
it's quite possible that
Oh
that could
wow.
happen, right?
Okay.
So
Okay.
in the situation like that, Eastern medicine recommends, or a lot of Ayurveda and traditional practices recommend as less of cold products in the body as possible. No cold therapy, for example, in that situation.
Okay.
Our ancestors used to talk about, no curds, anything that's acidic, anything with cold tasir, to
Mm-hmm.
go into our body, because our body's natural biological temperature is also about zero point 0.5 to 1 degree Fahrenheit higher in the luteal and the menstrual phases,
Okay.
compared to the follicular or ovulatory phases. So you want more
Okay.
warm stuff, you want more grounding there. um, a lot of, good recommendations would be higher carbs at that time, because our body needs more for protein synthesis, right?
Okay.
We need to be in less of a calorie deficit as the other two phases of the cycle, which is why for a lot of us, who follow a very strict diet, we may have more cravings, or we may feel a lot more hungry, or feel the need for emotional eating a lot more if you're not feeding ourselves enough.
Yeah.
So the menstrual phase specifically is about two things: rest and a lot of nourishment.
Mm.
Our bodies are not sick. It's just the end of the cycle or the start of the cycle, howsoever you wanted to take it, where our bodies need more rest and recovery so that they are ready for the next few phases of the cycle, right? And athletes follow this all the time. And I want to, I keep reminding people that rest is an amazing, amazing thing for our body. Athletes have rest and recovery built into their protocol. There is no way they're going to do any training or succeed in whatever they set out, whatever goals that they set out for themselves, if they haven't rested, if they haven't recovered their bodies at all. If you're working out, you need recovery days so that your muscle hypertrophy works out in your favor.
Yeah.
So it's a very important phase, and this does not mean that you have to lie down and not do any work. This means
I mean, that would
prioritize.
be ideal, but yeah,
Whatever
we have
works.
lives.
Exactly,
Yeah.
whatever works. And it's very interesting because let's say the ovulation phase might be the exact opposite, where you might need as less of physical rest as possible. So the
Oh, wow.
higher your capacity to perform at your ovulation phase,
Hmm.
the lesser rest you might need in your menstrual phase as well. And this is very interesting
Oh,
because our
wow.
body works in a context, right? Let's say during your ovulation phase, I'll take running for as an example because I'm a runner in training, and I love running for marathons, and I'm training for a couple of upcoming marathons. I can
Okay.
comfortably today run 5 to 7 kilometers on day 2 of my periods.
Okay.
10 years
Okay.
before this, I wasn't able to walk or get out of bed, right? This
Wow.
also
Okay.
means during my ovulation days, my training is much higher. So
Hmm.
I have,
Understood.
your progressive overload is not happening on a day to day basis itself. It's also happening on a phase to phase basis. So the
Yeah.
higher my load for ovulation is, the more my body is getting trained for activity and movement, which means I
Hmm.
might need less physical rest compared to somebody else who has
Interesting.
lesser activity or physical movement during their ovulatory phase.
Ovulation.
So it's in context, right? It's
Yeah.
not it's not that like menstrual phase means just don't move. I work out during my menstrual phase as well, but my
Okay.
workout is tapered down severely in the menstrual phase compared to the ovulatory phase, for example.
Hmm.
So it's that
Hmm.
tapering that's important, and adjusting that tapering accordingly.
Okay. And so, yeah, so it's not just the foods that actually we should be changing, it's everything. It's also the workout, and it's also, I mean, what else do we really have to pay
I,
attention to? Like you said, like cold. So you shouldn't probably do like cold water therapy during your menstrual phase and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
I don't recommend it to my clients.
Okay.
We don't have enough research. Like many things in
Okay.
female health, we don't have enough research on how this would impact fertility, how this would
Hmm.
impact, our body systems outside of fertility as well. And also, there are two things to keep in mind whenever we look at research. One, how much of this was done on women exclusively, keeping menstrual cycle awareness in mind. And two, given that we're in South Asia, how much of this was done on South Asian bodies.
Yeah.
Scandinavian countries have a very different perspective towards cold therapy.
Yeah.
Women do cold therapy a lot more regularly, but that's a different topic. That's a different climate altogether. We don't eat
Yeah.
the same foods. We don't have the same climatic systems. We don't wear the same kind of clothes.
Yeah.
So those changes make a lot of difference. Also, like we discussed, right? Our body temperature is higher during the luteal and the menstrual phase by 0.5 to 1
Yeah.
degree. The
Yeah.
cold sensitivity is much higher during that time. So
Okay.
as females, from the little research that we do have,
Yeah.
I would want us to err on the side of safety and precaution. So it's
Hmm.
much safer for us to exercise cold water therapy in the follicular and ovulatory phases, because our sensitivity to cold is much lower. Our body is not fighting off an infection or
Yeah.
thinking that our immunity is not as low
Yeah.
in these two phases compared to luteal or menstrual. So this kind of modulation is something that we should exercise more awareness on. I know there's
Yeah.
already so much cognitive load on the number of things women are expected to do all
Yeah.
the time. Do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. So I think our plates are already full.
Yeah.
um, I would recommend a very easy approach, whatever uncomplicates life as much as possible.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember, when we were speaking, you said that you have this, like, I won't say hatred, but you absolutely do not like the word dieting and cheat meals. So if you could go a little deeper into that, like,
No, it's complete
why?
hatred. Honestly, it's complete hatred. There is no doubt about that. I think food should nourish us, right? It's oil for our body, like the way we fuel up our cars. A machine can't work if it's not fueled up properly.
Yeah,
And this whole diet culture, and the word diet is not a bad thing, right? Like we've just made it a negative word where if you're dieting, it means you're not eating enough, or you're
yeah,
doing this to lose weight or gain weight. It's got
yeah.
such a negative connotation to it. And what happens when you're eating, or you're eating or nourishing your body with negative goals, right? I would
Mhm.
want I would reframe food as fuel for the body. I would want, to look at fueling up that nourishes my body, that gives me more energy, more strength, more higher productivity. It clears my brain and makes me smarter. And that reframing is something that helped me personally through
Mm.
my own journey towards better health,
Yeah.
to where I am today. And I think that reframing also brings about less guilt when, we set out these diet plans, and we think that we have to follow them to the T all the damn time. Right?
Yeah.
Life doesn't work that way. Life is not that structured. There's a lot of mystery around life. There's a lot of, we live in a community. So we live with other people as well. It's not like we can decide this is what we're going to eat all the time and
Yeah.
stick to it, because otherwise we're just living very solitary lives. The idea is to exercise awareness of what's best. So, when I work with clients, I don't give them diet plans at all. There's no diet chart that I give them. There's a
Okay.
plating method that we follow in
Okay.
terms of this is the amount of protein we should prioritize for each meal. These are the fibers, these are the carbs, these are the healthy fats. We do CGM analysis on what kind of carbs work and don't work.
Okay.
And when we say don't work, we also look at how to make them work for the body and what kind
Okay.
of combinations to look at the whole day. But my idea is always that once a client stops working with me, they should still have the awareness to continue to practice healthy food habits and healthy fueling habits all throughout. They're not working with me to get those ideas on what food to eat or what recipes to follow. What the
Yeah.
idea is to exercise awareness about what works for your body and what doesn't work for the body. And the whole
Oh.
thing with cheat meals and dieting, it just makes it takes away the joy of eating.
Sure.
It takes away
Yeah.
the joy of good food, right? I am against the idea of boring food that doesn't make me happy. I'm not going to eat it at all. And
Yeah.
cheat meals makes you feel that, there's an exam that you need to write. Um and if you don't follow everything to the T, you're doing something wrong. You should be guilty of it. There's no guilt when it comes to eating
Exactly.
food, right? Some dessert someday, or get biting into a pizza someday, is not a bad thing at all. It's in context, right? Health is not about one day or one meal. It's the lifestyle that you live.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm curious, do you also have, do you advise your clients to be like, okay, let's just like not do dairy at all, not do sugar at all, not do gluten at all? Is that a thing?
It depends on bio individual requirements.
Okay.
Not every body can digest everything.
Yeah.
In some cases, there might be allergies. In some cases, there might be intolerances. In some cases, it could just be an imbalanced gut that needs
Mm.
support. And once that support's done, you can consume more of those products. As an example, there have been times in the last 1 year, I was going through a very stressful period. And stress impacts your gut health, right? The gut brain axis is real. The hormones in the body and the way the food digests impacts how your brain works, the kind of stress you can take, the resilience you have. That lactose is something I was just not able to digest or
Mm.
tolerate. I spent a few months working on, supporting my gut, working through, my health. And now I'm at a point where I can more comfortably digest milk and curd and paneer
Mm.
and cheese, which 6 months ago would give me complete loosies.
Oh,
So our
okay.
health is not, it's a spectrum, and it's also a journey. Our bodies don't stay the same, and especially as women, our bodies don't stay the same. Every 10 years there's a hormonal change. First it's puberty, then our
Yeah.
body comes to, some kind of semblance where the menstrual cycle fixes itself. We might have a pregnancy in our late 20s, maybe our 30s, somewhere around 40, 45. We might start, experiencing menopause.
Yeah.
And this is not keeping in mind any surgeries. This is not keeping in mind any autoimmune disorders that might come in. So our body, especially female bodies, they are so resilient because they keep going through so many changes. There is
Yeah.
so much, in that sense, growth happening. We're constantly pushing our bodies to grow more. But if
Yeah.
you're not supporting it with the right kind of frameworks or the right kind of fueling, there's only so much a machine can function.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've said fueling a few times, and it's very recent. I just realized that for me, I have started looking at protein with a lot more importance because I feel like I was not getting enough protein. They say, what is it? It's about like 1 gram per 1 kg of body weight, something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But
Starts with that.
starts with that, but you can actually take a lot more protein than that.
Yeah.
And I recently heard this thing where this lady was talking about how in World War II, they used to, for the soldiers who were fighting, they used to give them a pound of meat
Hmm.
every day to eat so that they could like sustain energy wise. And the injured soldiers would get even more protein. And whatever research was kind of done on them, it showed that they were healing, I think, some like 3 or 4 times faster than the soldiers who were not getting that protein,
Yeah,
which completely blew my mind. I was like, maybe I should increase my
yeah,
protein intake
yeah,
every day.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
In general, India is a country where we work on a protein deficiency
Okay.
all across. And
Wow.
this is not just we, a lot of us talk about how India's cultures like that, etc., but I also want us to look back to colonial mindsets there. We
Mm,
are most of our families, whether partition families or families who've come from tribal regions, especially after the colonial invasions and after our freedom, we work on a starvation diet.
mm,
Famine diets and starvation diets have been, if you start looking at the psychology of how we eat,
yeah,
when you see families that come from partition as an example,
yeah,
and a lot of Sindhi culture, Punjabi culture works on this, where if you're not overfeeding a person, it means you've not hosted them properly. It has to
yeah,
come from somewhere, right? But in South India, you don't experience that. It's a lot more respect for the body.
yes,
Both of these philosophies are actually absolutely right, correct, given the context that they came from, where there's, if you come from a partition family, maybe 30 years, 40 years, 50 years ago, the whole idea was if you're rich, if you're wealthy, you will be able to serve a lot more food. You will be able to afford people being overfed,
yeah,
because those families may not have at that time known what it would mean to not get food for another week. We don't know
yeah,
because they were moved, right? And
yeah.
famine works like that. Bengali culture, for example, diabetes is a lot more common in famines and starvation food categories
Okay.
like this. And the psychology of how we eat food, how we treat food is so interesting to me, because it determines so many of the behaviors that we associate with food
Yeah.
in the first place growing up, because these are the cultures that we are brought up with. So lack of protein is actually like meat killing, for example, uh,
Mm,
became a bigger challenge. And there's been a lot of research and studies that came in where natural produce of jungles, for especially for tribal communities, started being heavily taxed during the British
okay.
rule, which is why they had to shift to more vegetarian forms of eating, even in
Wow.
cultures where meat eating was considered the norm. And there are different cultures, right? It's not to say that meat eating is right or not meat eating is
Sure.
right. It depends on the culture that you come from. But that heavy taxation also led to a lot more dependence on carbs
Yeah.
to sustain and to fuel yourself up. Now, our ancestors had a lot more active lifestyles, so they could burn off that carb much faster, which is why
Mm,
there's no problem with an idli or a dosa or a very carb heavy meal. But we don't live those lifestyles anymore. If we were living a very active lifestyle where we were out in the sun, or we were practicing agriculture, or we were walking long distances, it would be different. But what we
yeah.
do is we sit on a table and we eat our food, then we go sit on a couch, watch TV, or start to work again. Or after dinner, we're sitting with family watching TV, eating our food, then we are quickly going back up to bed, maybe Netflixing and chilling and going to sleep. So there's
Yeah.
no time for the food to digest, and we're not giving our bodies adequate exercise for it to digest either. And
Yeah.
those cultural shifts have started to have an impact on the kind of autoimmune disorders that our country is starting to face. India is the diabetes capital of the world for a reason.
Okay. Wow. I did not know we were the diabetes capital of the world. Wow. Okay. Okay. Okay, and taking it to the other side, I would love for you to dive into what kind of different rests we should be looking at, because I'm very curious to know.
This is my favorite thing. And I say this as somebody who has had a terrible relationship with productivity and ambition, where the
Same.
idea
Oh
was,
my God.
if
Yeah.
my rest time is not productive, if it's not adding value to my CV or my career, I'm not doing it. If I can't
Oh,
put up a video of my dance because it's going to, blow up my Instagram, it's not worth it for me, right? Like,
that's
I mean,
hardcore. Okay.
yeah, like a lot. And I think a lot of us think like that, right? We're in a hyper capitalist society where productivity at all costs has become the norm. And
Yeah.
it is very challenging with the economic, environment that we're living in today, with inflation, with, our dreams
Yeah.
of having better lives, and no idea of how that being possible, honestly, that
Yeah.
we've started to deprioritize rest. This whole rest is for the weak. And when I was in school, some of my friends would never sleep when it would be exam season, because
Oh
they would be
yeah.
preparing for exams. And I just really wanted to be like them, honestly. Even
Mm,
in law school, I just really wanted to be that person who stays up all night and studies diligently and gets a lot of good marks.
yeah.
My body wouldn't allow, and thank God I didn't know better at that time. But thank God my body wasn't allowing me to stay up that much. It just
Okay.
forced me to take that rest. Now, again, quick science on that. When our bodies perform,
Mm-hmm.
and to recover from all of that performance through the day, we go to sleep. So that, and sleep is an important part of, our recovery and our living,
Yeah.
because at that time our body is not digesting, it's not walking, it's not looking after threat, it's not trying to keep us safe. What it's trying to do is to look at, our entire body system and cleaning it up. There's
Yeah.
toxin waste removal, there's, dead cell removal. All of that, those recovery processes happen when we are sleeping. So sleep
Yeah.
is a form of physical rest. Even sitting down and, getting our legs massaged is a form of physical rest that we practice, right? Now, the other kinds of rests that we want to practice, especially in the kind of technology heavy world that we're living in today, is first of all mental rest.
Yeah.
And we forget to rest our minds. We're always thinking, we're
Yeah.
always doing some work or the other. If we're not working and we're reading a book, that's also our brains working,
Mm.
right? So in some way or the other, resting our minds, whether it's through breathwork protocols, or it's through meditation, or it's through journaling, where, our brains are getting the rest, is
Yeah.
critical for our brain health itself.
Mm.
Then there's social rest. For introverts, that might mean some kind of social engagement, because, we live in a community. And in fact, blue zones, where longevity is a huge
Yeah.
aspect of their life, prioritize community experiences,
Yeah. Yeah.
prioritize social experiences to keep you, grounded, and, to keep you engaged with society, so that you are not isolated. Loneliness is a big killer in the world that we live in today. For extroverts, that might look like reducing the kind of social commitments we have and spending more time with themselves and their thoughts. So it depends on, where we are on the spectrum and what we want to prioritize. Then there's
Yeah.
creative rest, which is, sometimes we might feel like there's no spark in life. We're just feeling
Mm.
creatively blocked. But what have we done to unblock that creative rest? And I'm not talking about changing the kind of consumption we have. I'm talking about creatively expressing ourselves, whether it's through art, whether it's through dance, whether it's through
Yeah.
writing, but, some form of creation that's coming out of us. It could also look like, cooking a favorite meal. It could
Yeah.
look like organization at home, where, or beautifying your home, or setting up a flower arrangement. It depends, right, on what people need at all times. Then there's emotional rest. That we're always in such emotionally heavy environments, and not everybody might be, emotionally fit for us, in the sense that some might need more energy from us to sustain those relationships, some might need much lesser energy from us to sustain those relationships. So that
Yeah.
kind of energy balance also becomes very important when we're on either extremes, or spectrums, right? Then most important, and I think this is so bloody important, and I fight with this too with myself, is technological rest. How
Oh.
much of our lives and our rest is with technology? If you're
Bingo.
meditating, you need an app on. If you're journaling, maybe there's an app or a notion going out. And the importance of this is not just, like, of course, our dopamine hits need to stop being as stringent and as frequent as they are for our brains to function comfortably. But also neurologically, we're just always connected to technology. And that
Mm.
leads to energy imbalances in our body as well, right? And the more neuroscience focused, the electromagnetic field of our body systems does not get a chance to balance itself, which is why grounding work is so important, right?
Yeah.
Walking on the grass bare feet, for
Yeah.
example, working with plants, working with soil, working with clay, is so important. Kneading the dough is, practices like these are things that we've completely eliminated from our worlds today.
Yeah.
Depending on the kind of unrest and trigger you're experiencing, it's also important to start prioritizing these. And this may not look like, that you've actively made all of these a part of your life. It can be
Mhm.
more on a situation by situation awareness based, in terms of what kind of unrest am I feeling today, and therefore what kind of rest can I give my body today.
Yeah, yeah. Can you go a little bit, can you explain more on what you said about dopamine hit through technology? Like, can you explain what exactly that is and what are the examples of what that looks like?
Sure. So there are two hormones in our body that's very, in for context of this. One is serotonin and one is dopamine,
Hmm.
right? These are happy hormones. Both have different functioning. But what these happy hormones do is tell our body, it's like giving yourself a hit that happy time, happy time, happy time,
Sure.
and your
Yeah.
body is constantly going through that up and down, right? Now
Okay.
let's take a platform like Instagram. How that works is, every time you see a new picture, you get
Mm-hmm.
more and more addicted to it, right? This feedback loop, or this habit loop gets triggered, because there's a hook that you have, there's a trigger that your body experiences from that, and then there's a reward. This reward, uh, when you're constantly chasing that reward, your
Mm-hmm.
dopamine start you know your dopamine is hitting with each reward, uh,
Okay.
achievement, right? But when we're using social media, for example, and we're constantly scrolling, we're constantly looking for the next big thing, we're
Mm.
giving our body these small doses of dopamine hits. And
Yeah.
what happens when you start dosing your body with any substance little by little, the
Yeah.
body's capacity to accept it and tolerate it starts getting higher. So you need
Mm.
more hits, you need more
Wow.
quantity of hits for it to feel the same way. So
Yeah.
what we're trying to do actually is, unknowingly, to pass our time, or to stay connected, we're training our body uh, to feel less happy over a period of time, right? We're not training our body for more happiness. Our body
Yeah.
is tolerating
Wow. Okay. Okay.
these
Okay. Yeah.
hits more and
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
And then what that leads to is just an imbalance in our mental states as well, right? So
Damn.
our
Yeah.
hormones start to get disbalanced majorly. There's social anxiety that people face, or when you're looking at or there's so much performative anxiety. And I'm sure you can actually talk about it a lot more in terms of your experience. I'd love to know what your experience has been in all these years as a creator, because I'm sure there's so much more you have to share on this, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but also like because I have done this for so long, I think I reached a stage where I was like, uh, ho gaya mera, like fuck this, I can't. So, I think it was just like this switch that happened where I was like, I don't give a fuck like how many likes I'm getting, how many views I'm getting. And slowly, of course, it also changed because I think I was in that phase of life where I was so jaded with this whole like social media stuff and like fashion. I really reached a point where it was, how many clothes do you need? Like, you can live with like five black t-shirts and two pairs of jeans. So, and I think in that divine timing, I also came across breathwork and I completely shifted. I pivoted, and this was my calling that I found, and I was like, okay, this is what I kind of want to now serve
Hmm.
with moving forward. And thankfully, because that happened, it was also, I feel, a lot easier for me to then let go of how many likes I'm getting, how many
Hmm.
videos I'm getting. I was no longer working with brands who wanted more views, who wanted me to spend money so that I could get more views, who wanted me to spend money so that I could buy more followers. I
Hmm.
was done with
Yeah.
that, thankfully. And yes, of course, then I went through this whole thing of like, do I even need social media anymore? I'm like, I'm breathing and I'm spiritual and, all that. But then, of course, I took a break and I had to shift my perspective so that I could then make social media work for me
Yeah.
rather than social media working
Yeah.
me. The
Yeah.
platform is there to serve you. You are not
Correct.
serving
Yeah.
Instagram. So yeah, I mean, I get it. And I think also when I started, it was the beginning of the industry. So it wasn't so, I don't know how to put it. You didn't feel attacked all the time.
Hmm.
Now, because there's so much competition, it's insane. Like, I don't know how people do it anymore.
Yeah.
Like, these creators, yeah.
Yeah. It's always
Um,
the chase. And I think one very interesting thing that's, actually worked for me, and I'm somebody who's always had a very poor relationship with social media, honestly. I felt growing up, a lot of comparison. I
mm,
felt a lot
yeah.
of envy in why I don't have something that somebody else has, and is fame good and is fame not good? And and there was a very long time where every year, maybe like for a month, I would try my hands at a creator career, and then say, oh, fame's not for me, I don't want it at all, and all of that. But I think what's happened over the years with this, and all of these mindset shifts when it comes to
Yeah,
nutrition and healing the body have also helped me with. So one thing is that I think a healthy body is the bedrock of everything else we wanted to do, right?
everything.
You can't be
Yeah,
productive without a healthy body. You can't achieve
yeah,
your ambitions without your body being healthy. So
yeah,
even though I work on a lot of productivity and brain health and brain growth, the bedrock of it is still going to be a state of homeostasis with a
yeah.
healthy body, right? And I think with fame, it's such a wonderful tool if used
Yes,
right. Right, like
yes,
there's
yeah.
good fame and there's bad fame, where bad fame can mean a mindset where we are trying to bring other people down by saying
Mm,
this is not right, this is what they're doing wrong, and tear them apart because we wanted to get that kind of association with negativity and opinion.
yeah,
But there's also a positive way to utilize that fame, like you said, to serve other people, where
yeah,
other people may have different perspectives. This is our perspective, and if this is the kind of people I want to be around, this the kind of community
mm,
I want to grow, then we can also
exactly.
start to utilize that fame in a much more positive manner. So
Yeah,
when that reframing happens, the likes you have, or the dopamine hits you get or don't get, stop making as much of a difference to you, where the
yeah,
serotonin, or the bedrock of your happiness and mental health stability starts to have a lot more value, because your time is being spent in other things, right? Like community service is a very
yeah.
important part of healthy living
Mm,
lifestyles that every single blue zone across the world has kept as part of it. So if
yeah,
you're trying to do something to inspire people or influence people, the intention with which you're doing it also
yeah,
has an impact. And sure,
yeah,
western science, or there's no certification for this, but I very strongly believe that the energy that we have, the way we, the vibrations that we have, and whatever woo woo terms you want to use that really work for me,
yeah.
have an impact on the health we have as well. The way we feel about ourselves, our environment, has a huge impact on how healthy we can be physically and mentally and emotionally.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think that is why now again I see this resurgence of importance being given to what is your purpose? What are you here to serve? Because when you use that for reframing that, yes, I want fame, but then how will I use my fame to serve my purpose?
Yeah,
Yes, I want to get rich, I love money. How will I use that money to then again serve further into my purpose? So
correct.
that kind of reframing helps, and having a why or a purpose really helps in that way, I feel.
Absolutely. In
Yeah,
fact, that's been one of the reasons why I started doing more, one-on-one work, more education,
yeah.
as somebody who comes from the startup background and was working on the exact same things.
Hmm.
Um, I'd burnt out completely. And it's so surprising and honestly so funny that somebody working in female health, uh, to help women be more productive, to have better health, was got to a point where my health was really bad, and I
Yeah,
had burnt out so much, to the point that I didn't even have the energy to fight for my startup once it was shutting down. um, it's through a lot of work that I came to the realization that the startup or the business wasn't important. It was the work that I was trying to do, which can happen in many ways, right? Nothing stops
yeah,
me from starting up again in the future, but
yeah,
and also nothing stops me from doing this work at more of a personal level outside of a VC backed startup, right? So,
yeah.
depending on what your goal is, it's always possible to achieve that purpose.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I'll again go into manifestation, but it is like, yes, you have a vision, yes, but then how you get there are like a million ways to get there. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about, what you went through where you realized that you were burning out? What was that like for you? What were you feeling during that time? And then how you sort of pulled yourself out of it?
So, in all the research I've done and all the last 10 years of understanding more about the science of the human body, disease doesn't happen directly. Like you're not going to directly be diagnosed with PCOS. There's going to be sleepless nights. Your sleep's going to get impacted. And that might look like just starting with your sleeping for 8, 9 hours, but lesser deep sleep. or
Yeah.
your heart rate is constantly higher, and there's no other problem that you're experiencing in your body, but you're just not able to breathe comfortably. And
Mm.
our heart rate and our HRV have a huge impact on showing us signals of if our body is about to fall sick or not. So
Okay.
I look at biomarker data, and a lot of doctors who look at biomarker data as
Yeah.
well can actually predict if you're going to fall sick in the next 2 to 3 days or not with an elevated heart rate. That's
Okay.
above
Wow.
baseline, because our
Okay.
bodies are at that time fighting off an infection,
Mm.
right? And so it's possible for us to understand these things. And once we stop taking these things seriously, honestly, we don't take pain seriously, we don't take
Yeah.
unrest seriously, we
Yeah.
only stop and pay attention when we're just not able to get things
When
done.
we need to go to the hospital is when
Correct.
we
Yeah.
wake up suddenly.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
we
It's
pay
crazy.
attention to, wanting to lose weight when we are 5 or 6 kgs or 10 kgs overweight. We don't pay attention, when our sleep is getting disturbed, or our stool
Yeah.
is not,
Yeah.
being flushed out of our body system properly, or when, our period cycle has started becoming switched up, whether it's in terms of days or the color of our period blood. And these
Yeah.
biomarker signals are critical for us to actually have a preventative approach to healthcare.
Mm.
And this is very important, right? Because when we look at this is what was happening to me as well, right? And I, thankfully, because of the past experiences I had, I knew something was getting bad, right?
Okay.
Where physically sleep was getting damaged, my hair had started to fall out again, my skin had started to break out, my periods were uncomfortable, there was just very slight minor pain. And
Mm-hmm.
I say this as somebody who came from 7 days of not being able to move because of pain to
Yeah.
having perfect periods, dot on time, no pain, no energy dips, nothing, to again feeling some kind of discomfort. I took
Mm.
those signals very seriously at that time. Unfortunately, because of a couple of other circumstantial factors, it was still quite difficult at that time to keep the startup functioning.
Yeah.
But that led me to understanding that burnout is close. I'm getting to that burnout. There was no rest happening, no kind of rest happening. So
Wow.
sleep's obviously the basis, but there was
Yeah.
just no time for anything else. Emotionally, I felt a mess. I didn't have enough clarity or creativity. I was not able to come up with ideas that were very creative and furthered the work I wanted to do, or just not have enough energy to see them through execution either. A lot of times we
Mm.
start things, but we're unable to see them through to execution, right? And we
Yeah.
think we're lazy, but sometimes our bodies just need so much more rest,
Yeah.
of different kinds, for us to even have the energy to get to that finish line.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and I of course know that you are launching a course very soon. I would love for you to share more about what that course is going to be. Who is it targeted towards, and what all is going to be inside the course?
So the course is called Nervous System Regulation for Female Knowledge Workers. Um, we think that the way to look after mental health and physical health is completely separate. When we look at mental health, we will think of therapy, we'll think of meditation, we'll think of journaling. When we look at physical health, we'll think of food, we'll think of exercise. But they're all
Yeah.
related to each other. Our brains and our bodies work in tandem with each other, right? And they're all impacted by each other. So the goal for this course is to help women, female knowledge workers especially, because of the different kind of lifestyles that we lead and the kind of added burdens that we have to face in the society that we're in today, to be able to navigate through better health, both physically, mentally, and emotionally, using fueling, movement, sleep, breath work, and the right kind of meditation for the kind of state of dysregulation. So, there are two states of dysregulation that the polyvagal theory suggests, that I subscribe to as well, the fight and flight and the free states. So, what you're going to learn in this course specifically is biomarker changes in the body when you're in fight or flight state or the free state, whether it's your RHR or your blood pressure or your temperature, and
Okay. What is
using
RHR? Sorry.
it's our resting heart rate,
Okay. Okay.
right? And so when you're in times of stress, our body is trying to, we've evolutionary grown to keep ourselves safe, right? Our body, at a basic core level, wants to keep you safe and undead,
Yeah.
right? Now
Yeah.
our body doesn't know the difference between a predator who's about to eat you and a looming deadline at work,
Yeah.
right? So we
Yeah.
have actually trained our body to think that everything is danger and
Mm.
everything is life threatening danger. And obviously, there's a clear note in the course as well that this course does not apply to, situations of famine, situations of war, because those are the realities that we're living in today. But for
Yeah.
regular life with all of its general stressors, how do you manage it using all of these modalities and identifying the right kind of modality? I think during my journey of working towards my mental health over the last few years, the big question was always, karna kya hai? Like, I
Yeah.
know I want to get better, but there is so
Yeah.
much. I
That
was
is true.
really tired of a throw spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks approach. I don't want to do that. So the whole idea of this course is for people, who want better brain health specifically, starting with nervous system regulation, um, to not have to throw that spaghetti on the wall. There's a clear biomarker protocol that you can pick up for
Okay.
overall growth over a period of time. And there's also these, the rest that we spoke about. There's also situational quick fixes in terms of, this is the kind of unrest I'm feeling right now, what can I prioritize today? I want the women I work with to not have to have more things to do on their plate. They already have so much. They come to me
Yeah.
because they are tired of, taking the burden and the responsibility of doing everything and figuring everything out. Everything's figured out for you. It's just a step by step approach. Just start following. That's
Yeah.
broadly the idea.
Okay, wow. And so does it also, I'm assuming that what it does is it gives you the ability to first recognize what kind of dysregulation you have and then
Yes.
accordingly take the next step.
Yes,
Okay, wow,
absolutely.
that's amazing. And what is the duration of the course?
It's self-paced. You can actually
Okay.
take it at any time and take as long as you want, and the whole idea is that you can keep coming back to it at any time. At no
Okay.
point, where you're going to feel that now I don't need this course. That's how I've designed it. So let's assume, you're in freeze state right now.
Hmm.
The next
Hmm.
best step is for you to be in fight or flight, not have regulation, because you want to grow progressively. There's no like upper limit to where you can be. And
Yeah.
the course launches next week, but the idea is that every month I'm actually going to be adding more and more resources. So by the time you get to a place where where your nervous system is regulated, the next step is to grow your resilience. How can we
Hmm.
look at brain health and brain growth, whether it's through interoception, right, where we are training our bodies to be more resilient in the
Yeah.
future. It's not
Yeah.
that we should just stop at being okay, right? Like, I have a very
Yeah.
clear distinction between sick care and health care in that sense, where
Yeah.
if you're sick, then the goal is to be at a place of okay health. That may
Yeah.
not mean that you're in perfect health. So perfect health will also take time, where you're not sick anymore, but there's more to do to train your body to be healthy and
Yeah.
prevent of anything worse from happening.
Yeah. And it runs parallel to the concept that you were talking about earlier, that it's through the ages and whatever thousands and thousands of years, the basic goal our body has had is to keep us undead. Like, it's
Yes.
survival mode. And so now finally people are waking up to the fact that, okay, you have nervous system regulation. So you can reach that state of like being optimal and showing your body that I'm safe. And then there is more after that. Like, you can
Yes.
also thrive, and there are practices that you can adopt
Correct.
which will take you higher and higher. So it's
Absolutely.
very, yeah,
Yeah.
it's very fascinating. What is your take on, I would love to know about breath work for nervous system regulation.
I think, breath work is so important, and I keep talking about resting heart rate, right? Like, the whole idea of resting heart rate is associated with breath work. From a neuroscience perspective, lower heart rates signify our body that we are safe,
Hmm.
right? When I say lower heart rates, I mean somewhere between 60 to 80, 90 maximum.
Okay.
Below that is, if it's natural, in the sense that if it's happening by itself without any athletic training, it could be a sign of risk. When it's higher, it could also be a sign of risk. Athletes usually have lower heart rates because of all the training. So my heart rate right now is in the range of 50 to 60, which is
Wow.
safe for
Okay.
me because I train so much, and my goal is to get to 40s because I want to become, like, I'm training to be an athlete properly. So
Okay.
anywhere between 60 to 80 is completely perfect for us. When our bodies are under stress, and our body detects any kind of danger or threat, our digestion slows down. At that
Hmm.
time, our body is not focused on surviving in the general sense of the word. Our body wants to stay alive, so our
Yeah.
libido will shut down, or our appetite will go down. We might have higher pain tolerance at that time. we'll experience a lot of people, not remember when, especially when they're in free state, not remember certain situations because at that time they were just trying to make it through alive, right?
Yeah.
So our heart rate actually rises when we are in fight or flight, and when it
Yeah.
comes to chronic free state, our heart rate actually gets very low, which leads to bradycardia, which
Okay.
is lower heart rates outside of athletic training, right?
Okay.
Where our body just is in a hibernation state, in some way to
Hmm.
say, because you're frozen up, right? That's literally
Yeah.
the idea, that you're frozen up. What breath work does is it regulates and tells our body that it's safe,
Hmm.
evolutionary, because we are, in some way, we are tricking our body to think that by using, intentionally breathing it at a rate that's comfortable, or practicing breathwork exercises in whatever form that we are doing,
Yeah.
our body is tricked into thinking that things are safe around us,
Yeah.
right? So it's actually a way for us to con our body, and you fake it till you make it, in some ways, where maybe you're doing a physiological sigh, and people can try that. It's very easy. It's not like it's difficult to practice the neuroscience ways of doing this, whether it's the
Yeah.
physiological sigh or it's the alternate nostril breathing, which is also
Hmm.
called nadi shodhana
Okay.
in yogic cultures.
Yeah. Which is Anulom Vilom, right?
Anulom Vilom, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
Brahmri that we practice, or Kapal Bharti. These are all breathwork practices that teach our body what safety means. So
Yeah.
I am actually a big fan of breathing as a modality for better health, because the minute my body think it's safe, my digestion gets fixed, right?
Yeah.
Like, it starts
Yeah.
to get fixed. Obviously,
Yeah.
that forms the bedrock, and
Yeah.
our heart starts to become stronger. It's using less effort to
Hmm.
pump in more oxygen to the body and to the brain, which means my mind is feeling more clear, right? So I'm actually a big fan of this. Neuroscience in general is a big fan of breathwork protocols. It's
Yeah.
extremely relevant for whether it's for athletes or if it's for pro performers, knowledge workers. I think breathwork is just honestly fantastic.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for that vote of confidence. Okay. And yeah, I would love to, if somebody wants to work with you, where can they find you? Please give us all the details.
They can find me on Instagram at Aruna Krip, or my Substack. Both are available.
Okay. I will share the links.
Yes, please.
And one last question is that if you could give one piece of advice to your younger self at any age, what would it be?
Please don't hate your body. I think
Oh,
that's about it.
so easy, it's so hard,
It's
right?
the
Especially at
hardest
that age.
thing. It's the
Yeah.
hardest thing as a woman to do, because anything
Oof.
we're doing, we're constantly messing up, right? We have this culture, and maybe earlier, pre-Instagram, pre-social media, it was magazines telling us do this to
Yeah.
look better, do that to look better, and it was always for other people. Like, you look better not for yourself, but for your partner or for your
Yeah.
family, or because what will others say, and all of this. And we're just constantly training women to hate their bodies. Nothing we
Yeah.
do is enough. If either we're too thin, or we're too fat, or we're not working out enough, or we're working out too much, or we're too fashionable, or we don't put in enough effort, I'm just exhausted, right? I want to look at the mirror and not think of a 9-step, 10-step skincare routine. I
Yes.
don't want to cover my body with, now I have to go for waxing, now I have to go for laser, now I have to get this done. Just the effort of being a woman has become so much.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I want to imagine how much time we spend in trying to be a woman that men don't have to. If it's even 1 hour a day,
Of
that's
course.
7
Yeah.
additional hours of a week going in just trying to look presentable for other people that men don't have to do. So I got this tattoo last year. It's from one
Okay.
of my favorite books since I was a child. It's called The Twits by Roald Dahl.
All
And
right.
on page 9 of this book, the writer talks about Mrs. Twit, who's gorgeous and has a beautiful face. And she was one of the most stunning people, when she was younger, but she had terrible thoughts. And she's a very negative person to be around. So she would never, feel good to be around. She would not look pretty. And the page says that one page has been stuck in my mind since I was a child, right? That page says that you could have a wobbly nose, you could
Hmm.
have crooked teeth, you could have a fat stomach, you could have weird hair, but if you have good thoughts, sunshine's going to shine through you, like
Yeah.
sunbeams, right? You're going to shine through that. And I think that's one thought that's constantly stuck to me, and I got this as a reminder for myself last year that I want to keep looking at this, because just it doesn't matter what we look like, it makes zero difference. Our bodies are there to support us, but we're not here to, like as women, we're not here to look pretty. We're not here to look beautiful on magazine covers. And it's totally fine, like if we that's what we want to do, because I think fashion is a great form of creativity. I think acting is a great form of creativity. But if that's your purpose, then yes. But that's not the only thing for all of us to strive towards, that, we are optimizing for looks at
Yeah,
all times. Um, I think we want to optimize for how we treat people around us, how we treat
yeah.
our bodies, how we treat ourselves, and all starts from how we treat ourselves, honestly. I mean, I think we're very blessed to have the bodies we have today. We are surviving because of this body. We can move, we can talk because of what this body does for us, and I think it deserves some kind of appreciation.
Not some kind, all the kind of appreciation and love. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Thank you for saying that. Okay. All right. So this we are wrapping up, and thank you so much, Aruna. This went by really fast. I love the conversation. Thank you so much for the wisdom that you have shared, and I think so many women are going to learn a lot from this conversation, as did I. So thank you again, and I can't wait for your course to go live. All the best with that, and I will
Thank
see
you.
you soon. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks so much. Thanks.